Chapter 7 Poem Animals by Walt Whitman. Animals is a poem written by Walt Whitman where the poet admires the animals for being calm, composed, and self satisfied, and contrasts their qualities with those of human beings. He finds the animals to be free from all greed, ego, and servility, as well as more humane than human beings. He would prefer to shun the world of human beings and live with animals. Summary of the chapter. The poet is such a staunch admirer of animals that he can go on observing them for hours together. He finds them to be so calm and composed that he longs to turn into an animal in order to live in their midst. He admires the animals' sense of self contentment, for they have no grudges or grievances and are never heard complaining about their circumstances. They have a clear conscience and they suffer no sense of guilt, for the concept of what is right and what is wrong does not exist in their world. Having no hypocrisy, they do not discuss their duty to God. They neither have any trace of discontentment, nor do they have any craze for amassing material possessions. The animal world is so full of equality and so free from superstition and dogma that none of them kneels to the other or worships his ancestors. No one is considered to be superior to the others, nor is anyone unhappy due to social oppression. For such an oppression simply does not exist as it does in the human society. Animals maintain and enjoy relationships of mutual respect and equality, which is something that the poet greatly admires. Animals possess some noble traits that once belonged to human beings. The poet wonders whether the animals have picked up those qualities that have been negligently shed by men over the passage of time. Theme of the chapter. The poem brings out a contrast between men and animals. In the good old days, men possessed god-like qualities, which they shed with the passage of time. The animals still retain the virtues that have been lost by human beings. Thus, one would feel more at home with animals rather than with human beings. Animals lead a life free from greed, jealousy, ego, and discontentment. Their world is marked by peace, equality, and contentment. Message of the chapter. The poem Animals by Walt Whitman seems to suggest that human beings, the crowning glory of God's creation, have shed their noble virtues and values and turned into uncivilized beasts, whereas animals seem to exhibit qualities that behove human beings. If this is true, it is better to live like animals than human beings, whose society is marred by hypocrisy, greed, ego, insincerity, hatred, discrimination, and materialism. The poet seems to give the message that human beings must try to rediscover and imbibe the virtues which they have lost in the process of civilization. They ought to return to a state of innocence and sincerity and learn to stay calm and contented with who they are and what they have got. They should shed their false sense of respectability and refrain from practicing any discrimination in the name of God or religion. They must also learn to stay away from the mania of owning things. Title of the chapter. The whole poem deals with the admirable traits of animals. So the poet has chosen to call his poem Animals. He feels more at home with animals than humans. Moreover, human beings behave more like animals than like Homo sapiens. Hence, the poet has rightly given the poem the title Animals, though it is very short and does not give a clear clue regarding the content of the poem. It contains no hint of the poet's dislike for human behavior in the materialistic world. Literary devices used in the chapter. Alliteration. Alliteration is the occurrence of the same sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. It creates a musical effect and enhances the pleasure of reading a literary work. Examples: I stand and look at them long and long. Here, L sound has been repeated. I wonder where they get those tokens. Here, were and the sounds are repeated. Another literary device used here is repetition. Poets often repeat single words or phrases, lines, and sometimes even whole stanzas at intervals to create a musical effect, to emphasize a point, to draw the reader's attention, or to lend unity to a piece. For example, I stand and look at them long and long. Here the word long is repeated to emphasize the length of the time the poet looks at the animals. Metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that is used to make a comparison between two things that aren't alike but do have something in common. Unlike a simile, where two things are compared directly using like or as, a metaphor's comparison is more indirect, usually made by stating something is something else. A metaphor is very expressive. It is not meant to be taken literally. For example, they bring me tokens of myself. Here, the word tokens has been used metaphorically for human qualities of innocence, honesty, and contentment, but the comparison is indirect without the words of comparison. Literary device anaphora. Anaphora is a literary device in which the writer repeats the same beginning of a clause or a sentence, chiefly with the purpose of emphasis on the repeated element, but also to bring rhythm in the writing. In this poem, the expression, they do not, has been repeated 3 times to emphasize the absence of some evil qualities in animals which we find in human beings. Similarly, the poet has repeated the expression not 1, 2 times. This is an anaphoric expression and emphasizes the prevalence of equality and contentment among animals. Literary device pun. Pun is a literary device in which a poet plays upon a word, using it to mean different things at the same time to create a humorous or rhetorical effect. Example: I stand and look at them long and long. The word long that has been used twice has been punned upon. The poet means that he stands and looks at the animals for a long time, and he longs to be one with them. Rhyme scheme of the chapter. The poem does have a definite rhythm, but it doesn't have any regular rhyme scheme. It is written in free verse.